What's going on, guys? IllumiGnatus. Tonight, we're going to get into what I consider to be some of the most important subject matter that you can possibly discuss in our current predicament, which is also ripe with opportunity. And I had really been thinking a lot about how I have become, I don't know if cynical is the right word, but certainly a little bit frustrated and discouraged, having spent the majority of my life believing basically that this was all leading up to the amelioration of mankind from the shadow of history and all of the skeletons and demons that lurk therein, and that in my lifetime I would see as kind of emerge from the spell that's been cast on humanity by religion and politics and all of these other sort of evil, monstrous distractions. And over the last week or so, I had been looking for different angles that I could, offer a more positive perspective on it. And I did find some things that kind of encouraged me to sort of embrace the possibility that we are actually still emerging into the light despite the chaostrophe and the potential for destruction. And we're going to get there in this stream, but there's a few things that have happened. Some of them, it all fits together, but we'll start with this. So you guys know, if you follow me, we're on our way to Cusco, and after about 7 hours, which, with a child and a dog, really amounts to a couple of days of traveling, we were in the mountains, and we decided to turn back. And I discovered today that Cusco, if we had continued traveling to Cusco, we would be stranded in the middle of nowhere, possibly getting airlifted out of the area because of riots. And you guys know how much I've been talking lately about precognition being enhanced by practicing pattern recognition. Could just be a coincidence, but it just seemed worthy to note that it is a fact that if we had continued on, apparently there's been some unrest there for a few months, at least ever since December. I guess a cop has been burned alive in a cop car. What happens is when there's problems in Peru, Cusco area gets shut down because Machu Picchu and some of the other surrounding Lake Titicaca and some of the stuff, there are access points to all of these places there. The indigenous or whoever it is that's rioting shuts that shit down because that's how to hurt the government and the country. To blockade, and then they won't let tourists in, and it's just, that's their way of getting clout. And that leads me to our second subject, because one of the main reasons I started this channel, the main reason, right, was to try to make a contribution to this period of rapid evolution of human consciousness. Many, many years ago, we all anticipated that there would be difficulties leading up to any kind of transition. No one was really naive enough to think that the powers that be would just kind of let go of their prize and just allow us to kind of make them irrelevant and shake off their shackles and, go on about our business, taking over the world. That's not realistic at all. We knew we had some things to address. And a lot of those things are the same things that were tackled in the 1960s. War, racism, sexism, prohibition of psychedelic drugs, anything that limits human freedom, and any attempt to legislate consciousness, to control consciousness through legislation, right? Those were the main battlefronts that we were anticipating. So this YouTube channel has been an attempt to deal with all of those things, right? I spent years and years and years, decades really, looking into all of these different mystical systems and finding most of them to be entirely bunk, some of them to be partially bunk, and sort of sifting through it until I came up with basically the mysteries and the Western occult tradition as being a compendium of the worthy stuff. And so really the only thing that I continued to pay attention to. And also psychedelics and plant medicine, extremely useful in so many different ways. So I integrated that. And then some discussion of the political narratives and how completely and absolutely bunk they are. That's why this channel consists of this mishmash of stuff, because it's more or less the fundamental components of the things that we have to change in order to get anything done. And they are also the best catalyst for change within ourselves, because we are not only a microcosm of the macrocosm, but we're connected to it all. So our internal changes dictate on some level external changes. And that brings me to my next point, which is that it doesn't matter what we do politically in the world. None of it matters. Donald Trump is not going to help you. Joe Biden is not going to help you. The Democrats are not going to help you. The Republicans are not going to help you. None of those people are going to help you. Right? Communism is not going to save you. Capitalism is not going to save you. Socialism is not going to save you. Change must begin within. I hate to say something that cliche, but it is absolutely unavoidably certain that until the interior of the people that are involved in the system change, no modifications to the system are going to be meaningful. That's just the bottom line, and it may be our undoing. And so that brings me to my next subject, which is these. I'm trying to watch my language because I've heard the algorithm like progressively buries you more and more and more. I already have all these strikes against me and I don't get promoted much. So it's difficult because these subjects kind of instigate a little bit of anger and animosity and frustration. So maybe it's also a chance for me to practice detachment. But here's what happened, basically. I live in South America, and that can be difficult sometimes because there's a lot of animosity towards white people. In fact, we get called gringo completely openly here in Peru, which is kind of the equivalent of someone in the United States seeing a black person, a white person, and saying, "Hey there, ninja, how's it going?" You know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't fly. But that's, it's just that open, the attitude towards outsiders, I guess. And a lot of people don't really understand why, but I do. And if you're one of those people that doesn't understand, you're about to. And it is extremely relevant to this conversation because we have to actually do stuff. We have to confront actual living, breathing, brain-dead zombie brain eaters in order to get them to change their behavior and to change their minds. And in fact, a little bit later in the stream, I'm going to lay out exactly what this revolution needs to look like. And I am really surprised to have to admit that Tucker Carlson is the last person I would have imagined would turn out to be an ally on any level. He is a person, from the look on his face and his job as a Fox News pundit, propaganda machine, mouthpiece, that he would not change his mind, that he would not listen to reason. And then I saw, and this is the only time, speaking of crazy coincidences, that I ever watch Fox News, but I saw this happen. He was talking to some professor, and the professor started talking about democratic socialism, and Tucker was like, that sounds amazing. I'm all for that. And Fox was like, you pack your shit and get the fuck out of here. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, really, man? Really? And since then, I've seen him listening to people that are saying things that are way outside of his conditioning, and he just looks really interested, and if it makes sense, he's trying to understand and actually, do the right thing, which really inspired me to think that maybe it's actually possible. A lot of these people that it seems like we cannot penetrate their indoctrination and programming and their BS, their belief system or bullshit. You can pick whichever term you like. It's like, what does AI mean? Alien invasion or artificial intelligence? What are they talking about, really? Is it even a different subject? But anyways, let's not go too off the deep end here. So, exploitation economies. In the 1970s, there was a study that was done that was titled, "Are Normal People Evil?" And it actually made a very convincing case that what we have come to accept as normal is actually evil. And I've thought that since I was like old enough to look around me and understand what was happening in the world. Normal people have always seemed kind of evil to me. And it's something that you got to be careful saying. I'm actually surprised how negative of a reaction I've gotten, but I guess people just have a hard time accepting that. I don't know. So there's this thing with gringos, right? People from the United States in particular. They feel like they're entitled to exploit entire races full of people. And I know white people are getting tired of being called racist, and I know that people say a lot of stupid crap like that, other races can't be racist, and it's all, you know what I mean? I'm not saying any of that stuff. But there's always a grain of truth in everybody's narrative. That's why the narrative is there. Nobody's completely right, nobody's completely wrong, and that's why no one can ever get on the same page. Because they have, half the truth over here, half the truth over there, and so we can never really come together. It's by design. But the reality is that people do just think that's normal. So over the last week or so, I've seen these two guys from Vilcabamba, Ecuador, that have a company called Abundant Living Ecuador. Now, Abundant Living suggests left-wing, ayahuasca-drinking liberal types, right? That's who they want to attract to the valley. But the guys that actually run this company are very much conservative, right-wing exploitation economy people. But they know who their target demographic is, and they are so shady and full of shit that they actually name their company some like ayahuasca-friendly shit to try to dupe people into coming there. By the way, you guys have probably heard me say this before. I've lived there. They try to market it as like this hippie Shangri-La plant medicine place. It's not. It's not at all. It's a bunch of toxic, artificial, alcohol-soaked, cokehead lunatics. It's just amazing. It's like a nut house for gringos. But that's not the point here. The point really is that these guys will go on the internet, and the first video I saw, they actually had a local Ecuadorian guy, and they had him on video, and they're getting him to kind of explain how wages are super low, prices are super low here, but we're actually able to use this Ecuadorian to exploit, to leverage, because he knows how to exploit the locals even more. And they're acting like this is just like totally acceptable behavior. And you could see it in the Ecuadorian guy's face, like he has to do what they say because he's totally dependent on them for income. But he's like, you can hear his voice cracking with like the hurt and rage. Like he really wants to tear their heads off and take down their throat probably, And these two gringos that are trying to pass themselves off as hippies, like, they don't seem to have any cognizance that what they're doing is actually morally reprehensible. Normal people are evil. That is, that what we have come to accept as, it gets worse though, it gets worse. I think it gets worse. And by the way, you guys, this is just an example. This is totally normal. Like the people that come down here, it affects me. It pisses me off because I am down here with good intentions. I try to pay people more than I have to because it's not what they deserve. It's just the minimum that you have to pay them, right? It's not what they deserve. It's not fair. They can't make a living. They're not happy with their wages. None of that shit is true. It's just, so when I have money, I always pay extra for everything down here because it's a deliberately engineered exploitation economy. And so a lot of people hate us because of these idiots, like this bald motherfucker at Abundant Living. There I go, algorithm. Managed to keep it clean for almost, 8 minutes or something? So, all right, so then the next video I see of these guys, and by the way, I did comment, like, you guys are just pieces of the next video I saw, they're talking about how you can get a meal for $3 at a restaurant, and it's not even true. Like, bottom is probably $4 to $7 for, like, you know, a terrible meal. Comida typica, you know, he was saying it's better than home cooking and all this stuff, man. I'm not trying to be mean to Ecuadorians. You know, I'm not trying to put any culture down or anything, but 100% of the foreigners I know will tell you avoid anything that says comida typica, which is local food. Runny beans, white rice, overcooked meat. You know, no one is like, yeah, this is better than cooking. No. So they're lying to people. They're telling them it's cheaper than it is. They're trying to attract them down there to sell them property. I didn't know if I mentioned that. It's a real estate company, right? So then the guy says something that really just, like, I was like, oh man, you just suck so bad. He said, and it's fine to pay them this because they're used to it. My jaw fell in my lap and broke my nuts. Like, South America is literally on fire twice a year from the top to the fucking bottom because they're so used to being fucking poor. They're so happy about being exploited by foreigners that they literally close the highways down and light the fucking buildings on fire. Like, what the fuck is this idiot talking about? You know? And it's just so, like, it's just so infuriating to see this, you know? And it's been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years, really. But here in South America, you know, the Ashaninka are still enslaved by the Shining Path, you know, the Peruvian Communist Party, right? The Peruvian Communist Party still has Ashaninka slaves. The rubber plantations, you know, the Shipibo were all slaves. It's not cool. And before we can ever have any kind of world peace, before we can ever have any kind of harmony, we have to stop instigating division and hatred first, you know? And as long as people have this superiority complex and this entitlement that causes them to subjugate entire continents full of people because they've been conditioned to believe that it's okay, we're not going to get very far. We're not going to get very far. You know what I mean? And people are worried about the United States border right now. What you ought to be more worried about is making the people in those other countries, making amends with them. Because you and your ancestors have been standing on their fucking backs for hundreds of years. So you can have cheap fucking, you know, stuff, rubber, and cheap fruit. And, you know what I mean? You have been exploiting the rest of the world so that you can have a better than average economy. And then acting all proud of yourselves like you're amazing when really, you know, you're just you're holding fistfuls of bloody money with a big stupid shit-eating grin on your face. It's not, you know, people just don't understand the extent of what the United States has really been doing and how they've gotten into the position that they're in. It's starting to be understood, you know. So I didn't mean for that rant to go on as long as it did, but obviously it's something that it really bothers me, you know, because it makes my life difficult. It is the exploitation economies that, and by the way, people in the United States are like, what? No, that's just conspiracy theory or whatever. They teach about it in college in Europe. Like, you can go major in exploitation economies and understand how they're actually engineered to support the world powers. So, you know, because if World War III happens, you think they're going to be controlling the borders? You know what I mean? I think people really underestimate how fragile society actually is at a certain point. You know, there are levees, but there's a lot of water. And those levees have been holding back a lot of bullshit. And when those levees break, it's not going to be water. It's going to be bloody sewage that floods the cities. You know what I mean? Not the best thing in the world. So, now that I have gotten that off my chest, and probably lost half the audience because they're rolling their eyes like, yeah, they should pull themselves up by their bootstraps, you know, fucking right-wingers. Like, dude, they pulled you up by your bootstraps. You think you did that, but you didn't really. So in other news, somebody, one of our IllumiGnatuses sent me this message inspired by a video of Tucker Carlson talking to someone. I don't even know who the other guy is. But, and I'm not going to read it exactly because obviously it references the video and stuff. But, just to make it really clear exactly what it is that we're trying to do and what the real oppression and the objective of the powers that be sort of editing our experiences and limiting our access to information and shadow banning certain creators. And by the way, do me a favor, hit the like button, share, subscribe, consider joining our Patreon. It has fallen a few dollars below my monthly minimum. And after a week below that, I have promised to delete the channel, so let's not let that happen. My basic thing is that, at 10,000 subscribers, I feel like $100 per 1,000 subscribers a month is the minimum that I can tolerate. So after 5 years of doing this, so if we fall below that and stay below it, I'm just not doing it anymore. So I do appreciate all of you guys. You can also support us one time through the options in the chat. We really do appreciate it. And also the Ashaninka Shamana interview, we're putting it together in 10-minute pieces. And that's going to start coming out tomorrow, I think. So this video, he tells me, outlines some of the features of the global turnkey totalitarian trap silently being constructed all around us. Brett Weinstein says we're approaching an end game where we need something like a French Revolution against the rent-seeking elite globalists for liberty, which would have to essentially be Illuminist values as the French Revolution was meant to be about. And there are fates worse than death. Give me liberty or give me death. A couple of quotes from people from that era. The solution can't be to fight just for negative liberty, but for positive liberty, or else we face collective action problems. In other words, a revolution that can unite people all over the world and empower them as a collective is needed. He calls the enemy Goliath. He said that Goliath, especially during COVID, made a fatal mistake. This is what's important here. It canceled, picked on, outcast all of the smartest and most ethical minds, thus functionally setting up a dream team to lead the David-like killing blow to Goliath. It will have to be the killing blow to the old world order, the dynastic elites, to the historic master-slave dialectic. It has the potential to be the rebirth of Illuminism, scientific rationalism. I think a new Illuminism movement would do what we need to see happen, basically. The goal is to liberate humanity from all of the past religions, all the dynastic command control systems, remove all values, Nietzsche said, and to unite against the eternal enemy and temporary enemies of truth, enlightenment, gnosis, freedom, etc. The manner in which that is done and what the world are, and what that really means is what needs to be worked out first. And I think we're well on our way to understanding what that is. I mean, I don't know. That last line is a little bit confusing to me because I feel like we have worked out exactly what that looks like. And it's maybe hard to fathom this, but if people are allowed to think for themselves, I think what ultimately will happen is that the consciousness will achieve homeostasis, because when any system is allowed to act in an organic way without being influenced by outside forces, it finds homeostasis. And people in the current paradigm tend to just adopt some sort of political bullshit, some, party line narrative, and they repeat that. Most of the people that think they're free-thinking people nowadays really are just regurgitating a different narrative than the one that they originally started out regurgitating. Or maybe they didn't have one at all. But for the most part, that's not what we really see happening. There are very, very small pockets of people that have actually figured out that the only way forward is to transcend the entire matrix, the entire network, the entire culture needs to be allowed to pass away quietly in the night. Otherwise, it will die violently during the day. Right on, Worm Tongue. And speaking of that idea, I don't know whether it's Maslow or Maslow. Maybe it's Maslow. I don't know. That guy, the pyramid of the hierarchy of needs. Somebody just discovered that right before he died. Why does it sound like there's a doorbell ringing constantly? There's no doorbell here. Like, that is just so weird. You guys hear that? That's so baffling. There's no doorbell. What is happening? Someone brought a doorbell with them. They're just out there ringing it with like a little speaker on it or something. So Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. You have your basic survival shit at the bottom, and then it goes up. And he actually added above I should probably pull it up so I can do a better job of talking about it. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Yeah, okay, so it used to go physiological needs, safety needs, love and belonging, esteem, and then self-actualization on top. But they discovered that he actually had self-transcendence as the top of the pyramid of human needs. And so this is not just a pyramid that is supposed to represent things that make us happy. These are fundamental needs that humans have to have. So it may be to a lesser extent that self-transcendence is as necessary as water, but it is no less necessary. In fact, it has a smaller total space on the pyramid, but it is at the top. And what happens when you transcend the self is that you have a different idea of what is important. You have a different understanding of the priorities of being part of a biological system, and the collective well-being is prioritized more for people that have had this transcendental experience to an extent that supersedes people that have not. And so when you start talking like this, people kind of balk oftentimes. They don't like it. And that is because their sense of self, their sense of self-centeredness, their selfishness, and their political indoctrination along those lines is triggered. And especially if you tend to be right-leaning, when you start talking about worrying about the collective interest, your red flag communism, that light goes off. And it's important that we understand that we're not talking about mandating anything. We're talking about organic experience, right? We're talking about the natural direction of human evolution. We're talking about the fact that patterns in biology, patterns in the substructure of creation, and patterns in history repeat. And we have the missing link. We will have another leap of that type. And when these things happen, no one has to mandate these changes. They come from biology. They come from energy. They come from the structure of the universe. They come from these cycles and repeating patterns. So, this is another thing that when we talk about a revolution with illuminist values, and people think about the New World Order, Adam Weishaupt, the real founder of the actual Illuminati, was not really promoting a one world government in the way that people understand it, because you have to precede that idea with an understanding that it's assumed that that what it means to have a government has evolved before this one world government would exist. So, we have to re-engineer our ideas about what it means to even have a government before this illuminated, governmentless, borderless, religionless world could possibly be a viable idea. So that is the thing. And then, the criticism that we get a lot of times is that where is the plausibility here? What are you going to do the day after the revolution? Right on, Anthony. I appreciate your support on Patreon. I hope everyone else out there joins Patreon or supports us via PayPal and Zelle. Like I said, we dropped below our minimum this month, so have to fix that. Hate to see us sliding backwards. Yeah, surrounded by NPCs. What was I saying though? We do have the catalysts to drive this kind of transformation. That's the thing. It's not really pie in the sky idealism, or vain philosophizing. We can see the mechanisms of action that could actually act as springboards to this kind of transmutation of NPCs into actual thinking, conscious. What the fuck? 9 o'clock and somebody just fires up a. Man, life in the jungle, right? What was I saying? Okay, so AI, for example. There's a lot of fear around AI for good reasons. The first Neuralink, surgery was successfully completed, I think, yesterday. According to Elon Musk, the patient is recovering well. Really ironic that the same guy that is saying that AI is a threat to humanity is also putting chips in people's heads. But that guy, in my opinion, is a complete shill. He is nothing but a propaganda mouthpiece playing a role. He is not good by any stretch of the imagination. But AI does have the potential to level the playing field in ways that can't be controlled. And what people worry about, what we hear people worrying about, and when people are talking about regulations, here's the key, you guys. When politicians are talking about regulations, they are never about your interest. It is about protecting their interests, not yours. So that means they feel threatened by AI because it's going to empower you. Otherwise, they wouldn't be saying a fucking word to try to scare you away from it. That's facts. You can put that check in the bank. Shit will clear with flying colors. Never, ever, 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 ever is the government passing legislation in your interest. The only way that'll happen is if it happens to align with the interests of someone that actually matters to them. So I think that the reality is that they are afraid of the great equalizer. When they say it's a threat to humanity, they mean it's a threat to their fucking reign over humanity. Because it allows us to manifest our imagination in ways that we could never have even imagined before. And when it really becomes advanced, the interaction of psychedelicized minds that are capable of adapting and changing and growing very, very rapidly because of the neuroplasticity and neurogenesis that's catalyzed by the psychedelics, for example, interacting with a 1500 IQ intelligence. We will be able to catalyze our own conscious evolutionary process in a way that's never been seen before in human history. And I think these old lizards that are ruling over humanity at the current moment will be so incapable of adapting to that they just won't, they won't even have anything to say. My one concern, I guess, is that, the question of whether can we make it to that point without World War III destroying most of the planet. But then I think that that's probably part of the process. It's just an inevitable, if it's true that there's a universal mind and this whole entire universal process is dictated by a sort of neutral and objective intelligence, basically, trimming the fat off of humanity. All the cities are out of control. The crime is rampant. Good luck rehabilitating people that have, been 3 or 4 generations deep in the cartel, for example. The numbers of those people is astronomically high. At this point, I think, major cities with ample warning, it's almost like a roach motel or something. I'm not saying that I hope that's the outcome, but I am saying that I can also see how it will be inevitable to reorient the human race with these kind of numbers, and particularly with considering the extent of damage in a lot of those people. It's like, man, is this really necessary at like 9 o'clock at night? Like, what the hell is he doing out there? Very interesting conversations with AI. Yeah. So, I mean, that's basically the gist of the stream that I had planned for tonight. I think it's still possible that we are moving into a new paradigm that will make a hell of a lot more sense than anything else in human history. And even though, I might talk a lot about the problems and the horrors and the negative potentials, it's only because I feel like we need to be aware of the whole picture. I really, I've had a couple people in the community say like, oh, I had to unsubscribe because of the political shit. Well, get your weak ass out of my community then. I really hate that. I feel like okay, so I get it. It's too negative for you. So we'll all deal with that. We'll all pay attention to it and we'll deal with it. And we'll let you know, hopefully we can protect you from it while you have your back turned to the fucking monster. Brilliant, It really gets on my nerves. I can understand not wanting to hear political stuff, but when you give me the reason that there's too much negativity, it's like, well, then melt, fucking snowflake, get out of here. We don't need you. What we need is tough, hardened skin, spiritual warriors, people with thick skin and soft hearts, So if anybody has any questions or any other topics that you would like to get into, or any comments that you want to throw in the chat, this would be a good time for that, because I'm kind of winding down on, this was just kind of a short and intense rant, but it's really important. We cannot continue like this. And there are two ways, really. I can't say there's the only way. There are 2 ways that we need to be dealing with this. And one of those ways is to take full responsibility for our internal environment, right? To understand the full potential of inner transformation to affect the rest of humanity. It is not woo. We have a scientific basis for, I never went into the collective intelligence thing. I knew I was missing something. So the old political doctrines that encourage people to be very self-centered, there is no self. Look at Michael Levin's work on basal cognition. By the way, it has advanced. I haven't been following it for a while, or I haven't been posting it on my channel. But LSD in the water, I'm all for it. Wait, Swan song, Epilogue. No, not me. I'm talking about the human race, dude. If we don't evolve and revolve, then we are done for, And it's actually from the Tool song, the only good Tool song on Fear Inoculum, in my opinion. The reading of our Swan song, or stay the grand finale, stay the reading of our Swan song and Epilogue. One drive, stay alive. I don't remember. That's Descending. It's the only song in that entire album that I think is actually passably good for Tool, mostly because it's all old music that they just cut and pasted old riffs together, and then Maynard kind of half-assed his lyrics over that, and it's just like lame beyond comprehension that people say it's like this genius thing. This is why Tool hates Tool fans, because it's like, dude, we could literally piss and record it, and you guys would call it a masterpiece at this point. 10 years ago, when they did more than that, 15 years ago, when they put out 10,000 Days, it was already regurgitated old music to the extent that Maynard publicly said these guys have become a public hit, or a greatest hits version of themselves, and he didn't even want to do it anymore. And the fact that they did it again and just repackaged a bunch of old music, he hates it. He doesn't want anything to do with it. Anyways, that's a totally different subject, I guess. But yeah, so basal cognition. The cells are capable of remembering. Here's one for you vegans out there. Venus flytraps can count. And they can hold multiple number sequences in their minds at a time, because they need at least 2 of their hairs to be tripped at once, and that has to happen 3 times. So when the first 2 are tripped, it closes, and then when 3 more are tripped, then it releases the digestive juices. So plants can count, and touch-me-nots, Mimosa pudica, which grows all over the jungle here on the roadsides and everywhere, contains 5-MeO-DMT and all sorts of antidepressants, and it's just an amazing medicinal plant for all sorts of different purposes. It's an aphrodisiac, but also a birth control, which, couldn't ask for a more perfect combination than that. It helps with, I actually make a tea with Toei, Brumansia, and Mimosa pudica that I drink for insomnia and inflammation. But it can remember stuff. So it doesn't just respond to tactile stimulus. It remembers. If you shake one every day when you go by, within only a few days, it will stop closing up, because it's like, it's just that guy shaking me again. Just stops doing it because it knows it's not actually going to be injured. Now, if you injure it and you shake it, it will continue to close. Pretty wild, right? So they have memory. They can count. And perhaps the craziest one is that if you gas them with the same chemicals that we use for anesthesia, plants will fall asleep. Electrical activity does the same thing in the plant cells that happens in our brains. So vegans, if plants can count, they can be put under with anesthetic, and they become unconscious, which suggests that they're conscious. They can count, they remember, and they can lose consciousness. You can shut the fuck up. Because it doesn't matter what you consume. It's all alive. Plants know you're eating them. They can count. They know they're there. They're conscious. The only thing that is required for a cell to have memory is electrical activity. And why? because the memory is stored not only in our brains, but also in a field. And so this redefines everything that we have thought we understood about how consciousness works, how the brain works, what the brain is for. And the point of it is, earlier I was talking about how this transcendence that Maslow actually intended to be at the top of the pyramid of human needs leads to a higher prioritization in people of collective well-being, right? That's one of the primary consequences of experiencing transcendental mind, because you become part of the universal mind. So your self is now that self. Right? It makes sense. Like it's not a delusion. You don't become part of the universal mind or integrated with it. It's not like you're thinking that is happening. It is actually happening. That's why I have received accurate information from DMT and ayahuasca experiences so many times, because you're plugged directly into the mainframe for a limited period of time, and then that closes up. And by the way, it doesn't close up entirely. It just closes up most of the way. So as long as you're using these things properly and responsibly, your precognition and telepathy and all those kind of experiences, synchronicities especially, will increase. They may not become constant. They almost definitely won't. But certainly there's an increase. And so what I'm getting at is that this new scientific research about the field and the basal intelligence of cells and how it's really about the electrical signals, which is what? Light, fundamentally. So again, the consciousness is in the light, and the information is in the field, and the patterns in the field. I think that the field is, when you take LSD or psilocybin and you see these sort of little, it's almost like a fabric, I could describe it as. I know everyone sees it the same way because I've seen graphic artists, recreate it. I think that's the field that you're looking at when you bring the filters down. And so this idea that the collective intelligence is the only intelligence kind of negates this self-centeredness that people have been indoctrinated to prize, and they feel that it is what protects them from all of the needy people and all of the predators and their neighbors. And, you close off and you take care of yourself, and that's all that matters. And that mentality has got to be dissolved to an extent in order to make progress. That is the hardest part, I think, of what we are confronting, and the message that we have to figure out how to very tactfully format so that people that have spent their entire lives being conditioned to feel threatened by people speaking about the necessity for these things, so that they can receive it. And of course, the best way to do that is to get them to take psychedelics. Because it's one thing to be told something. When you hear, we are all one, that sounds cute, and people like the sound. It's warm and fuzzy, right? People like the sound of that. But it's an entirely different thing to experience it directly. There's really no type of spiritual knowledge, in my opinion, that can just be dictated to someone. This is why religions have failed, except that they all have nothing when you ask to see the securities. We've been waiting for Muhammad's Messiah for 1,400 years, Jesus for 2,000 years. The Jews have been waiting for their Messiah for 2,500 years. I could go on and on, where the securities, but also people invest in these religions, and something is wrong with them, first of all. When people accept Jesus into their heart, the way that they act is really off-putting to me. It's almost as if they know that it's not real, and they're trying to, I don't know. It's hard to describe, but there's this thing that they all kind of acquire that's really unsettling to me. It's not good. But the point that I'm making is that you can't just conform artificially to a bunch of foolish rules of ancient date designed to make you all feel great while you fold, spindle, and mutilate the unbelievers from a neighboring state. You can't run a country by a book of religion, not by a heap or a lump or a smidgen. Of foolish rules of ancient date designed to make you all feel great while you fold, spindle, and mutilate the unbelievers from a neighboring state. Or maybe just rent a nice French bomb to poof them out of existence, leaving their real estate right where we need it so that we can build more temples in which to praise our God, because he can really get down to business. But you know what I mean? The real change has to be catalyzed through organic processes. I can't say that enough, you know? And that's what psychedelics under the proper circumstances are able to do for people that religion does not consistently do. And it doesn't come with the dogmas. It doesn't come with the interpretations of a mediator, of government, of church, of preacher and pastor. You know, it does not come with those things. It is a direct transmission from the universal mind to the individual. And of course, it's always possible for that to go awry. But it is certainly and provably, demonstrably, studies back this up, a tremendous number of them at this point, absolutely overwhelming, the best possible way to address addiction, PTSD, depression, to accelerate learning, you know. They even recently did a study on ayahuasca using adolescents, so like 14 to 15-year-olds, a group of 60 in Brazil, and they compared that group to a control group of non-ayahuasca using kids from the same, you know, economic background in the same part of Brazil and all that. And the kids that used ayahuasca scored better in every single category across the board, and like remarkably so. So, I mean, I'm sure you guys get a sense of where I'm going with this. You know, if you use my channel, go through all the huge history of all these things that I've, you know, the Hermeticism, the Kabbalion, plant medicine, psychedelics, different meditation techniques. You know, we have had people already looking at this stuff for thousands of years, really. And with the information age, some of us have been able to really sift through quite a lot of it and distill the most effective methods and strategies and combinations of practices to yield the greatest catalyst to internal transformation. And you cannot change anything in the universe without affecting the entire universe. Entanglement shows us that. And if you actually really process this and understand it, it leaves you with the sort of almost overbearing sense of responsibility that, you know, if you really understand physics, if you understand that energy or information is not lost at the subatomic level, ever. And that entanglement means that all of these particles are responding to each other no matter where they are in the universe. The weight of the world, and really every star and every galaxy, you are responsible for all of it. The weight of the world is actually on your shoulders at the end of the day. So quite literally. It may be that it's more or less subtle, but when you act in concert with a large body of people, then that subtlety becomes macroscopic and actually can affect some pretty massive changes. And so that's kind of where we're at now, you know. We have to find a way to consolidate our forces. We have to find the people that have truly transcended, right? Like I'm not, Donald Trump is not good. Joe Biden is not good. Don't talk to me about either one of those people. Like, in my opinion, if you are still involved in that kind of belief in that political system, you are not awake. You are not an asset to any movement. You have got so much work to do before you can make any kind of positive contribution to anything. You are part of the problem until you have extricated yourself from all of that entirely, you know? If you think any major narrative on the world stage isn't part of the play, you know, you're still brainwashed. I'm sorry, you know? And then the religions as well. if you have not come to the understanding that the only way to have any kind of real spiritual relationship is to forget about all of the old institutionalized religions, guaranteed to be nothing but toxic, designed to make people passive and controllable. End of story. In fact, I was thinking today about how when you look at where there were most recent like unconquerable tribes, where the people represented the greatest threat, or where slaves were necessitated, there's so much Jesus in those places. You really think that's a coincidence that that's where the Catholic Church went and made sure they converted every single person as thoroughly as possible? Nope. So, we have to find a way to consolidate our forces, but we have to make sure that those forces consist of people whose minds are truly, meaningfully, and completely liberated from all of the games of culture. Culture, your cult, it's culture. It's not your friend, as Terence McKenna observed so many years ago. What would you say, Worm Tongue asks, on the topic of light, what would you have to say for one born of darkness but still drawn to it? I've seen and done things. The light is blinding. Psychedelic take me further into the dark. If psychedelics are taking you further into the darkness, it's because you have unresolved traumas or because you have been wounded by just the nastiness of the world, and unable to manage your anger and disappointment. I don't have enough information just in that comment to be sure exactly how to respond to that. But you say you're born of darkness and attracted to the light. What the fuck is the universe? The universe, from the darkness came the light. That's the whole story of everything. So, you're just still in that part of the process where you are transmuting lead into gold, life into light. And so, you just have to increase your determination and your mindfulness. You need to find ways to engage in flow state activities, perhaps learn the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, which is an excellent ritual for conscious engineering of your internal landscape. And the middle pillar also is really good for, you're visualizing the light of Keter, which is like the divine light consciousness, and then drawing it down to regulate your speech, and then regulate your emotions, regulate your creativity and sexuality, and then finally to regulate your steps. And the Sephirot that you're illuminating with this divine light also correspond to chakras, except for do we have a chakra in our feet? I'm not really sure. 99.999% of us shouldn't take shrouds. I think he means shrooms. Yeah, sure, you guys definitely join the Patreon, the Discord. And I think I'm actually going to do a music stream after we wrap this up, which will probably be soon because it's almost 9:30. And you can find the Discord in the description, where you can also find my PayPal, Cash App, and Zelle. It's very hard to cause or contribute to a evolution without any capital. So if I am empowered, I will take the best people I can with me. There's no doubt about that. And that's really what we have to do right now. We have to build ourselves up as quickly as possible, because unfortunately, some of the rules of this world are dictated to us and not by us. You can spend all of your time and energy trying to just manifest shit without building the proper channels for that energy to flow into and give it the actual substance that it needs to express. And, you will find that your energy is wasted. Some of the rules are dictated to us and not by us. And one of those, at the current juncture at least, is that money is power. And so long as people that pursue spirit are not interested in money, and people that pursue money are not interested in spirit, we have a serious problem. A real serious problem. So we have to find balance, and we have to figure out how to change to turn the tables, disconnect the cables. Okay, so I'm hunting. I'll give you guys a minute if anybody has a topic or questions. My chemist mate is cultivating ergot amines. Don't tell me that here. Yeah, that's not easy to do, what you're talking about. I'm not going to say it out loud, but good luck with that. If you figure it out, please do send me a card or 10. That would be really, really, really helpful, actually. Yeah, man, and how wild is that? I've been talking about precognition being built up by pattern recognition and all of these streams lately, and then I just suddenly, on our way to Cusco, was like, you know what? Let's turn around and go back. And then all fucking hell breaks loose on the road between here and, I would be stuck with a toddler, like maybe even on the highway with people lighting shit on fire and flipping cars over and like... it's wild, And I do want to go and work with this Dina, the healer, and you guys are welcome to as well. If you want to fly down here, it'll be pretty cheap compared to a lot of other retreats. Do I have any experience with Enochian magic? I heard you touch on a little bit, but I'm curious if you have any stories. I'm not planning to do that type of magic. Well, I don't necessarily have any stories exactly, but I do have a bit of information that really lends a little bit of credence to the idea that Enochian could actually have some kind of substance to it. And the way to understand this, I think, is, you know how you have voice command on your phone? The universe's operating system also has voice command. So that's kind of how that works, I think. And so Enochian, John Dee, and Edward Kelly were the court magicians to... was it Elizabeth or Victoria? I don't know. Some queen back in the day. And this is really a great argument in favor of magic because at the time, England was the most powerful empire on the planet. And who is the queen being advised by? Magicians. And how are they making their decisions? By staring into a fucking crystal ball. So if that doesn't work, why did their advice pan out so well? You know, that's kind of a crazy one. I mean, I guess it could just be coincidence. You know, I mean, this went on for 3 decades, but could just be coincidence, I guess. But Enochian has been studied by linguists, linguistic scholars, and determined to actually have grammar and syntax that is legitimate. And so maybe I'm underestimating John Dee and Edward Kelly, but I don't know that it would have been within their skill set to engineer a language like that. So it does seem that it could actually be legitimate. I have never really bothered to mess around with it because they say that if you don't believe in magic, the best thing that you can do is learn an Enochian call, and you will know instantly that it is real. But you will also severely regret it because almost inevitably there are all sorts of catastrophes and disasters in a person's life. And they even say that you shouldn't listen to it, although there are recordings of Aleister Crowley reciting Enochian on YouTube, and I have listened to them, and as far as I can tell, there were no immediate catastrophes. So whether it's truly an angelic language or not, John Dee and Edward Kelly were pretty weird guys. They swapped wives at one point, which I guess, it's cool if that's your thing. That whole cuck culture is a little bit weird to me, but to each his own. But yeah, so beyond that, I don't really know what to say about Enochian, except that Danny Carey from Tool does seem to think that it's real, and he seems like a pretty smart and down-to-earth guy. I met him in Los Angeles one time, and he surprised me in how much he just seemed like just some dude that I ran into or something. Like there was no rock star, what is it, artifice? Is that the word? You know what I mean? None at all. It was really almost weird. But he's into that. And he also, I read an interview with him in Revolver one time, I think. And the interviewer said that he had a demon in a little box, and that it would occasionally yelp and beg to be let out. And he would like slap the box until it shut up and it would be quiet. I have no idea if that's true or not. But yeah, I mean, I know that Danny Carey is a believer. I would just leave it alone if I was you, personally. All right, guys. I mean, I guess that's, I'm almost a little bit annoyed with myself that I ranted so long about the evil gringos and the animosity that they've created around the world, really, because I know when people come and watch the replay, they're not going to make it to all this like deep metaphysical stuff that came later. I probably should have done that first and then ranted about the evil gringos later. But I appreciate each and every one of you for spending this time with me. I appreciate you even more if you send support to our Patreon, PayPal, cryptocurrency. We've made it all kinds of easy for you to support the channel. And at 10,000 subscribers, I am making less than $100 per 1,000 subscribers a month. And that's not cool. I actually looked up what a channel with 10,000 subscribers should make, and it was pretty depressing to realize that demonetization has made this journey so much less comfortable than it should have been, and also much less effective because my reach is very limited. They do not promote demonetized creators, so bummer. But yeah, so join my Patreon so you can join our secret streams, become an IllumiGnatus. You also become part of a community of people that is increasingly consisting of highly intelligent and very illuminated people, and some of us have developed meaningful relationships over time. So you're not just supporting me, you're joining a community of people that are very forward thinking, and I would not be surprised if some of us or all of us manage to accrue some degree of power in the coming years. So check Discord. Yeah, join the Discord as well. I'm going to start putting more energy into that. So yeah, all right, guys. I will see you in the music stream in about 20 minutes or tomorrow.